In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Obelus skies, troubled ground. With your hosts, Gypsy King and Dr. Nothing.
And we're back, and you're at Chicago Underground, 1680. I'm here with Jason, my co-host, and of Obelus Skies. So, Jason, how did you get into investigating UFOs?
Well, it started out when I was very young, and I had a whiteboard, and I put dots on the whiteboard, and I said, those dots, that's the foundation of existence. Now, this started my thinking process for understanding the world and the universe. Up until I was about 16. I had, up to the point of 16, redrafted many times my idea of a grand unified theory, which is basically on the principle that keep it as simple as possible, no simpler. Now, this thought process allowed me to open the plausibility of any possibility. So, taking all that into consideration, all the information that I've been absorbing, I've been asking questions. And if you have enough questions, the answers start bleeding through. If you have enough questions, think of questions as puzzle pieces. You put them together, and you've got a complete picture. And the extraterrestrial presence is a major puzzle piece that, when you put that in, completes the picture for what is going on in this planet and what we find out later in the solar system.
What got me into alien investigation was pretty much my search for religion, my search for the truth. And I was thinking like this, okay, there's a lot of questions that's in the Bible that I never got an answer for. So I ended up going to the library, the Harold Washington Library, and I ended up going through a lot of books, studying on Jewish mythology, studying on Greek mythology, just my own time. You know, it wasn't an assignment for school or class. Then I came across witchcraft, and I noticed that a lot of the symbols that was used in Wicca religion was similar to Jewish mythology, you know, and angel worshiping. That's pretty much what they were doing. They were worshiping angels, and they put a circle or emblem that you will wear on your chest, and you draw a star and you write the name of the angel and stuff like that. So it's a lot of similarities in a lot of religion in regards of worshiping deities and you name it. So the biggest religions now are pretty much the basic religions that we hear about every day, which is Christian, Jewish, Muslim religion. I mean, those are the big three, you know, and then you have the other ones. So my thing is this: everybody can't be lying. I mean, you're looking from the atheist perspective that this is some type of mass illusion, or me coming up with some form of rhetoric to recreate our own understanding based upon the fears of the unknown and stuff like that. So I mean, whatever reason you could think of, there's something it's a counter. You know, there's a God because there is a God. There isn't a God because we don't see, we have no contact with this God or whatever, and we just sprung up out of the ground through evolution. So I was on a journey for truth, and what I found through this journey of truth that majority of the religions that we believe in, as human beings on this planet, are interacting with each other. They pretty much fragmented truths. You know, you could take one part of a religion and break it off and go wherever you want to go with it. You know, so you had this, like you said earlier, a puzzle. And in my search, I also realized that there was a passage in the Bible describing the Watchers, you know, and how the Watchers came down and they pretty much had their way with the women. And in another scripture, I'm trying to remember as I speak, there's a passage in the Bible that states that the women should cover their heads. And I came across this again on YouTube, where there was a guy who was Muslim, and he was saying that the women should clothe themselves and cover their heads and stuff like that. And he was using the same Christian Bible verse to persuade the audience. He said it's in your own religion, but if you pay attention to the context that it was written in, it says, and because of the angels, that they should cover their heads and stuff like that. So basically, God was telling man that to hide the women, and the best way to do that is to cover themselves, you know. Or there's another saying that if you don't cover yourself, you should cut off your hair, that the women should cut off their hair. And he took it out of context of the story of what God was saying. He wasn't saying to the women should cut their hair off for shame. He was saying to hide your women, the women should look like men. That was pretty much what he was saying. And that slapped me in the face, and I was like, wait a minute, we're reading the Bible totally different. We're caught up in the holiness and the worshiping of God. And God is just telling us how life is. It's pretty much give us the blueprint of how the earth was made, what transpired through those days, and what's leading up towards the end. That's it. I mean, read the Bible like a book, and you won't be caught up into all this other stuff. I did the same thing with the Quran. I did the same thing with pretty much every book that I read, and I was like, oh man, this is eye-opening. I just read it like a book. I didn't get caught up in the belief that the Bible, every time you read the Bible, there's something new. You know, I took it like, I'm going to understand this, and that's it. I believe every time a person says that every time they read the Bible, that they get a new meaning from the same scripture, I was like, that's because you didn't understand it the first time, man. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times for you to really comprehend what you're reading. You know? Absorb the information. Let it sink through your head. So, here's another question I have for you. What is your religion belief?
I'm Christian in the sense that and I should be careful about saying this, because there's a lot of Christians out there that claim to be Christian, and I'll say it in a sense like this. I'm Christian at arriving to become, for lack of a better word, clear. And I think that should be the objective of every Christian, is not to be focused on what other people are believing, but to be focused on the self and how you reach out and how you influence. And I would not find myself to be a Christian if I were imposing myself and my beliefs on others. Rather, I find myself a influence as an example. And I think that all followers of whatever religion it is, that you should be focused on being a positive influence and focus on identifying the good in everyone. Because if you identify and recognize the good in everyone, it will bring out the good in them.
Good. That's good. That's good, man. Positive energy. My religion belief is pretty much non-denomination. That's for myself. So, what do you define as good and evil?
It's hard for me to explain it in layman terms, but I'll give it a try. I'm going to first explain it the way that I understand it. And good is something that is progressively uncontrolled. When you try to control something, it creates disorder. And basically what disorder is, an accumulative destruction, or an algorithm of destruction. Now, things in nature get destroyed, and then there's regrowth, there's rebirth. But when there's disorder, there's a gravitation toward a continual destruction. Mathematically, you can represent something that is controlled through a distribution known as scalar invariance, or Benford's law. And you can look this up. This statistical model is used to identify somebody who's cooking the books. For example, if somebody is controlling the weather, or making up information about the weather, or about the stock market, or about voting data. If you could get that data, you could identify whether or not it's fraudulent, whether or not there's disorder. So if you were to ask me again, what is the difference between good and evil? Evil is control. In other words, controlling something other than yourself.
Okay, so in other words, evil is influence.
No, influence is not control. You're not telling somebody what to do. You're suggesting, or you're setting yourself as an example. It's up to them to decide. Control is when you don't give somebody the power to decide for themselves.
Well, I'm thinking about how that control can come into play. I mean, the only thing that really control is the law of the land. I mean, pretty much rules and stuff like that.
We have laws in place originally out of good faith, of measure, to protect ourselves from other people that want to impose control on us. There's a saying that goes that there's always a few that ruins it for the rest of us. In other words, a few obnoxious people, or a few bad eggs or bad apples that cause a problem, where in order to respond to that problem, we create laws.
Okay, so what makes you think there's aliens out there? I mean, and what do you think the nature of control comes from them or the government?
Well, the first part of what makes me think that they're aliens. Firstly, to answer that, the universe is vast beyond any measure fathomable by our own imagination. It's incomprehensible how large the universe is. And we would be rather egotistic to think that we're the only ones here. The second part of that question is that, going back to what I was saying before, there is millennia of conflict of what I call the third hand, and what anybody else that is in these circles would call the third hand. You create conflict between two bodies by a third entity. They could be human or otherwise. And that entity could also be a tool or a mechanism. Our own technology is beginning to discover that waves influence matter. And if you could influence matter with waves, you could influence emotion. I'm not saying that you influence exact thoughts, but to get influence emotion, and through that, you could use that to trigger and evoke certain response to stimuli. Whether if it's wave technology, like radio waves and whatnot, using technology that the U.S. military has been using for weather modification and weather warfare, going back to the Vietnam War with the mudsled that pushed the opponents down using radio waves in the atmosphere, known today as HAARP. And that technology came out of a government operation out of Australia. Can't remember the name of the complex, but I was in touch with one of the engineers that was developing that in the early 90s. That technology was bought out by a major U.S. military subcontractor. And that technology got developed into HAARP, which is headquartered in Alaska and propagated in miniature, like the USS, I can't remember the name of the ship, but that was right off of the coast of Japan during the earthquake. Now, I'm not going to say, like every conspiracy theorist says, that was the reason there was an earthquake, that the military caused it. I think there's a bigger picture of what's going on. If anything, the military might have been trying to cancel out the waveforms of the ancient alien technology deep in the ocean floor.
Okay, and another question I have for you is, why do you think the government is covering it up? I mean, what do they gain from covering it up?
There's two elements in the government. There's the good element and then there's the bad element. I'm talking about two different groups of people that are in different departments, compartmentalized or not. And there's a tug of war. And that's reflective of the same division between the conflict in the skies. So when we look at the side of the good people, the good folk, they want the information released, but they feel that the conflict in the skies is too harsh and difficult and of a security threat. Should the public know what is going on, and should the aliens know that the public knows? Because if that happens, we are no measure of strength against the conflict that's going on. However, put that aside, I think we're coming to a point in time where that struggle is becoming resolved. Now, the second part of that, which is the malevolent humans and reflective of the malevolent extraterrestrials, they are trying to control our capacity to become fully capable of what God has given us. And to give you a specific example of that, and right down to the nut of it, is our pineal gland. The Vatican has the biggest statue in the world of the pineal gland, represented as the acorn. And that is our access point of internal access to know anything in the universe. It is our access point to God. The single point, the now, the only thing that does exist. And they want to suppress that. And that's where it starts. All these poisons we're taking in, and the genetics that are showing, the GMOs that are showing that the third generation down of rats and gerbils that have been tested, third generation down, become infirm. We are now in the second generation of genetically modified organisms. So the ultimate aim of the malevolent beings is control. And how do you control a population that's so large? So I'll just imply or allude to what the agenda is eventually, with the second part, the malevolent side of the leadership, both human form and extraterrestrial form.
That's saying a lot. And if you think about it, what you're saying is that the government has full information about these extraterrestrial beings, and that they're deciding what information or how to conduct dealing with that information. But to me, that means if that was the case, then they also had contact with these beings. And to a lot of people, that's like too far-fetched, or to some conspiracy theorists, that's dead right. That's hitting the hammer on the head. I mean, well, you know the terminology, but that's dead on. But to me, I'm thinking, what's the big picture? I mean, you say control. I mean, control doing what? What's the big thing? You know?
What's the motive?
Yeah, basically, yeah. What's the motive and what's the outcome?
The motive is the very sinful things, the motives behind the sinful things that the Bible talks about. For example, lust and the flight, or better word is the drive for destruction, death, killing. Those sort of things is what gives these entities energy, and that's their motive, is to continue. There is no ultimate. There's no ultimate aspiration or goal. It's just a gerbil on a wheel, constantly getting satisfied along the way.
I think, to be honest, I think that's part of it, but I think some of it is a little bit deeper. And I think reading the Bible and reading other religions and faiths and stuff, you always have two oppositions. You have good versus evil. But what's in between that is that chessboard that's being used in manipulating humans. And Greek mythology is pretty much known for that. Either you're on a quest, you did something wrong, anything that pretty much made the gods mad, there was an outcome from it, like quick as day. So you did something one night, the next thing you know, you cursed for some reason, So and I'm thinking, like, right now the biggest things that's on TV and in the movies are hauntings. You have Insidious that came out not too long ago, Poltergeist. You have all this stuff on TV. So now it's like you have aliens, you have spiritual encounters, you have all this stuff all rolled up and it's coming at us with all this information. You think they hiding in the open? Is that the case? Because I'm thinking like this. To me, the end game is freedom. Who freedom it is the question.
Well, there's freedom with bondage, and there's freedom with, just being unchained. And if you're freedom with bondage, you are not only pulling a weight on yourself, but you're pulling a weight on others.
So here's a good question. Say, for instance, we're walking down the street and we see a UFO, and the UFO's seen us. You know what I'm saying? What is the expectation of it? You got two beings staring down at each other.
A lot of it is coincidental. If it's purposeful, and a lot of these sightings are, the experiences are either good or bad depending on what the source of the UFO is, or the extraterrestrial. Abductions happen, and a lot of the abductions are very similar. They take something from us, which a lot of people are suspecting that are aware of this and studying this is genetic code. Why do they need our genetic code? Well, there's two most prominently possible answers. Either they're trying to fix their own, or two, they're trying to prepare their next race on this planet. Now, the other experience that people have with UFOs is they feel an uplifted and open energy. They feel restored, refreshed.
Well, that's interesting. Did you say, refreshed? I mean, some people feel that same thing with religion, catching the Holy Ghost or something like that. Well, when I mention freedom, I'm not talking about like freedom from bondage. I'm talking about freedom from the universe itself. It's like the ultimate enlightenment. It's like somebody give you the answer to a problem that you worked on, and then he's like, "Oh, that's how you do it. I got it." And after you got it, you're no longer lost in that problem anymore. After you figure it out and you can do it easy, with practice. So I think we're stuck in a system. We're stuck in a system of religion. We're stuck in a system of politics. We're stuck in a system of trying to find the truth. We're stuck in a system of lies. We all caught up in a whole bunch of mess that is structured. Believe it or not, I believe there's structure in it. And I believe those structures have form outlets of which one person can go and try to find the truth and goes into some form of understanding. But what in the long term is, no matter how much information you got, you're still stuck on this earth knowing the information that you have is either a lie or a truth. So whether or not I see this UFO standing in front of me, whether or not this alien comes down and say, "What's up, Gypsy King? How did you get to Detroit?" or whatever the case may be, you got an apple pie in the pocket or whatever, just to make a light of it, there's nothing else after that. Guy gets back into his ship, he flies off, I go to home, and I tell everybody, "Hey, I seen an alien, and he asked me how to get to Detroit, and he wanted an apple pie." I get laughed at or scoffed off or, making light of the whole situation. Pretty much that's what it is. So when you say abduction and all that kind of stuff, what I'm trying to get at is this. What is the outcome? Every time something happens, every time somebody reports something, then nothing is done about it. It's not taken seriously.
It's not taken seriously publicly. As I was saying before, the conflict of strife is not only on this planet, but it is so because of the strife in the skies. And if the public is aware of that, that becomes a danger to us, because they would know we are aware of it.
I believe they are. I actually believe that they already know that we are aware of it. There's the plausible non-deniability there, and that's what saves us. The government isn't, the authority figures are not going out saying, "This is what it is." They're still hiding it. Well, then why is the sightings? Why do we have sightings? But you could fly so high up so nobody can see you. This UFO was like 25 feet up in the sky about.
Some of them are coincidental. Some of them are for disinformation purposes. Some of them are military craft using the same technologies that they garnished from cooperation. And that's the other part that got us into the military-industrial complex, is the cooperation with the entities, basically the wolves in sheep clothing. And those that don't understand that expression, a sheep in wolf clothing, a wolf in sheep clothing, is an entity that approaches you in good faith when they're not.
I hope none of these guys try to, contact me on on that level. But these sort of questions that I have growing up as a child is like, how did we get on Earth? Why we are the only people? How come there's no life on other planets? Stuff like that. And then seeing things that people report on a constant basis. I mean, this is like all these people that are reporting, they all can't be liars. I mean, somebody's telling the truth, you know. And then I'm like, okay, I asked my grandfather a long time ago when I was a child, it's like, if Adam and Eve was the first people on earth, how did Cain go to a city? You know, it's simple things like that kept bringing up questions and stuff. Then I'm like, okay, so got in school and learned that there were other planets out there, and I was like, well, how come there's no life on those? You know?
The interesting thing about the Bible is that a lot of the biblical figures lived between 300 to 800 years old.
Yeah, that trips me out, man.
No, here's the kicker, and this is how it works. When you age, the definition of aging is that the renewal of cells slows down quicker than the death of the cells. So you have dying cells quicker than they can be replenished. That's the definition of aging. That's why you end up with wrinkles. Basically, you're dying quicker than you're being renewed. That's aging.
Okay.
So the biblical times, the genetic makeup of those people, they age slower. So when they were having kids when they were 300, 400 years old, they looked like they were in their 20s.
I don't know about that, but I'm thinking like the age gap that we have now, and if you do believe in the Bible, then it's you can't even understand that in that frame of mind. What it's like to live 200 something years old, or think about that. I mean,
well, here's the whole idea of the reason we are the way we are today, and you know, eating from the fruit of the tree, the fruit of knowledge, is that we are impure, we are imperfect, we are an imperfect image of God, because an entity came in and messed with our DNA. And if we lived today to be 200, 300, 800 years old, we would be even more destructive. And we would have been quicker to destroy ourselves in this planet than we are now.
Okay, what about if you don't believe in God? What can be the explanation of that? I mean, what could be the explanation?
If you're atheist?
Yes.
If you're there is an atheist perspective, and it's more exopolitical than it is religious. Religion is just merely putting on a set of glasses to view the same thing through a different set of symbols, a different set of philosophy or understanding, a different ideology. But across the board, it is the same thing. Now, there's two different ideas of God. There is the all in Hinduism, and it also reflects in all religions, depending on how you interpret your religion and God. And that is the moment. That is the access point. It's not when you say we are created in the image of God and likeness. One interpretation is that our core is the image. It's not a physical image. It's more of a etherical image of existence. Now, the second interpretation, and the way that these two connect as one, is that we are created in an image of God and likeness in the physical form as well. That God has the internal essence of the all omnipresent. That now that everything is at a point, and that our access to that is the same. It's through the pineal gland. And when we think of heaven and an eternity, whether we go to hell or heaven, what that basically is the DMT that's released in the brain. And right before we die, we become in the moment, because the only thing that does exist is the moment. For eternity, we're in the moment.
That's a good concept. Got me thinking over here. Well, I have a different perspective on that. I think that the areas of life that we're living are moments of time, and that we experience through that experience we live and we define ourselves through moments and through trials and tribulations. But to me, the outcome of our existence and is pretty much that we were placed here. I mean, the whole being of who we are and trying to find, I think we are suffering from some form of amnesia. It's like we're constantly trying to redefine ourselves. We're constantly trying to find who we are. And then in between those things, we are experiencing things that has no scientific explanation, has nothing that within reason other than if you follow these belief structures.
Well, here's the thing, and it starts with the statement. We repeat history if we don't know our history. Now, that's taught to us in history class. And if you haven't heard that in history class, maybe you aren't from our generation. And that goes to my second point. There is a motive out there, and I'm talking about the second side, the evil side, to destroy that history and to rewrite that history. Now, if you think about it this way, whoever wins the war of whatever conflict it is writes the history.
I mean, that's I don't know. History is written by the people who run the battles. But at the same time, I honestly believe that there's, how could I say it? There's something that is present, and there's something that is right there, and you just can't put your finger on it. We have the answers. I honestly believe the answers is already given to us. We already have it. We just haven't put the pieces together. My belief with the government is that basically 15% of the people in the government probably know that there is aliens. I'd say probably 5% probably actually met them. Probably. I'm not sure. But the whole outcome of this is that we're preoccupied to be able to sit down and examine the information, and we have so much stuff going through our lives, our daily lives, that we don't focus on that. So with that being said, I honestly believe that the answer is there. Few know, in the higher places and like the government and all that kind of stuff. But I definitely believe that our religion pretty much tells us the truth. No matter how fragmented it is or whatever you believe and stuff like that, they're all pointing to beings other than ourselves in existence. And the irony behind that is the United States of American government claimed to be Christian. Right? So if you believe there is a God, God is not a human being. If you pray to a God every day, you pray to Allah, you pray to some deity, if you're in any other cult, it's not a human being. So who are you praying to? And that to me is an alien. So these are the topics that we go over and discuss, and in October we'll have people calling in, and we'll also simplify the information that we're giving to you, and we're also going to give you information for you to search for yourself. And the name of the show is Obelus Skies, and you can go to obelusskies.com to find out more about us, and when we actually start, the actual date will be on the website.
obelusskies.com, one S in the middle, and there's a sign up for an email to get updates. So So please put your email if you're interested.
Okay, guys, that's the show for tonight. If you can hear the music in the background, that means they're jamming downstairs. So I gotta get to that. Shout out to my beautiful wife, Mani. I love you, the Gypsy Queen. And we're out, guys. Take care and have a beautiful weekend.
Thank you for listening to Obelus Skies, Troubled Ground.